I believe we are live. I am Nick Rice along with Phil Nunziata here. I'm from the West Coast. He's from the East Coast. We're both very excited for this weekly presentation. I'm Nick, and that's Phil. We are on NFL Goal Line Live. We are simulcasting on national sports, and on it's our very first broadcast on on Spreaker, and then we have our second broadcast on 1,000 mics. We're very excited for this presentation of NFL Goal Line. We'll have a quick rundown of our topics. Tannehill named the starter for Miami. How will that fare off for the Dolphins this coming year? Terrell Owens had a terrible game, to say the least. Targeted 5 times, completed 0 times. He dropped a touchdown. How is he going to fare this year for Seattle? And not to mention the terrible uniforms that Seattle has this year. We'll go way in depth on that. We have a special presentation or a special guest to the show. We have Jason Lundgren joining us later on in the broadcast, and Terrell Pryor. Believe it or not, he's making headlines in the National Football League. How will he fare after 2 failed fourth quarter drives by the Oakland Raiders? How will he fare, and will he ever be a starter in Oakland? This is NFL Goal Line here. Welcome to the broadcast on National Sports. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome inside our National Sports Studios, the radio program with all you need to know about the National Football League. NFL Goal Line is presented in large part by National Sports.
Really, I think you have to almost the numbers with the game table. I think we definitely need to see more of each of these guys. But if I had to go out on the limb, I think Andrew Luck will have a better year because with Washington, you never know who's going to start. They are working in a lot of new receivers into the offense.
For your weekly analysis and recap of every angle of the National Football League, tune in to the NFL Goal Line, presented by Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata for everything NFL. Not to mention, we are extremely interactive, always looking for extra listeners and callers onto the set. Your voice can be heard every Monday. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. See you then. All right, welcome back to NFL Goal Line. I'm Nick Rice, along with my partner in crime, Phil Nunziata. Got it right this time. And Phil, how you doing? Welcoming you onto the set, and I'm sure you're ready for an hour-long presentation of some football today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back next week because we got just as much to talk about, maybe even more topics this time, and I'm really excited to dive right into it.
All right, let's get started. We have Jeff Demps, a developing story over in New England, especially because they played tonight. They played the Eagles. We'll have a game break on that later on in the broadcast. Jeff Demps signed a 3-year contract with the Patriots, and obviously Demps, he's making headlines because of just how productive he was in the Olympics this past year in London. And he was part of the 4x1 Olympic 100 team, 4x1 team for the United States. Not of the United States, of Jamaica. And Jeff Demps, can he be utilized in this Patriots scheme? They're already stocked full of this wide receivers. Including Wes Welker is the leader in that crop. How do you feel Jeff Demps will be utilized, and will he be successful for New England? What do you think, Phil?
Well, first off, Jeff Demps clearly is just a heck of an athlete. He's a silver medalist from this past Olympics. He went to college at the University of Florida, which is right in my backyard. And even if you're not a Gators fan, you hear a lot about the University of Florida. And I pretty much watched Jeff Demps through his whole career, playing actually running back in college. Obviously, that's not the case in the NFL. He's a little too small to do that, so he'd probably switch to receiver. But here's a guy very productive in college, had 2,470 yards rushing and 23 touchdowns. Keep in mind, UF did more of a running back by committee, so he was never the featured back. But you can see by the numbers here, very productive. And I think New England, this is a no-risk, high-reward move, because if he can even put in a fourth of that, it'll help the New England offense. And really, there's not, in Belichick's eyes, there's not much to lose by taking a flyer on this guy, Jeff Demps.
Yeah, for Belichick, believe it or not, it's a win-win for the Patriots. Now, I'm interested to see just how the Patriots were able to claim him. I'm sure a lot of teams were very interested in acquiring Demps when he did make that move. Hey, I want to join the National Football League. I'm done with the Olympics. I'm done with all that commitment. Now I'm ready for just playing some football. He had a tremendous college career, as you mentioned, Phil, and in the NFL, maybe he gets a little bit of both action, maybe even running back. Now the thing is, he probably won't get those up-the-middle carries. That might be a little too obvious, but Demps could be utilized maybe, on screens, on horizontal routes like drag routes and wheel routes, or maybe just, in the option. You saw Ronnie Brown in that one game against the Patriots score 5 times. Maybe New England has a repeat of the Wildcat formation against their divisional foes.
Yeah, a title that's not really used much today, but he's almost the definition of a scat back. He's someone who could be used, as you said, on screens, on draws. That's what the small, faster running backs do. You're right, like as you're saying, you're not really going to use him up the middle, which is something that at University of Florida you rarely saw happen. So he could definitely be used in quick short routes in the passing game. He's just a fast guy. Maybe they bring him in just to be a kick returner, but regardless of where they put him, I would not be shocked to see him give immediate production once he gets on the field.
And the interesting thing is, this guy's unproven in the National Football League, and they sign a 3-year deal with Demps. Obviously, they have a big long-term commitment with Jeff Demps, the sprinter from the Olympics, and he already joins, a receiving core that seems to be pretty dangerous and up-and-coming. And you obviously have Tom Brady coming back with another year with New England. Obviously, yeah, again, you mentioned, I think it's just a win-win for the Patriots. The worst thing that they have is they let go of a 3-year contract with a guy that wasn't really played that much to begin with. And honestly, I think for Jeff Demps, this guy, he'll take a little while for him to adjust the not necessarily the speed of the game, but the size of the game. But honestly, I think it'll be nice to see how Jeff Demps transitions to the National Football League.
Yeah, I think the best point of it all is, this is not someone that's going to be pressured to start right away. He might not start in general. This guy could just be a solid role player through his career. And as you said, the loaded receiving core of New England, a lot of them also young players looking to prove themselves. Obviously he's even going to get to camp late. He missed training camp. He is going to jump in here, I'm guessing sometime soon. But there's really no pressure to jump in there and start right away like some of these younger players, which might get him enough time. And here's a guy, fresh off the Olympics. He's clearly more mature beyond his years. He's a guy that's traveled the country, traveled the world more or less, and, seen how athletes in other countries conduct themselves and how they train. And here's a guy who's going to be a lot more mature than what you expect from a guy fresh out of college.
Exactly, and the thing is, which really puts Jeff Demps in a position to succeed, nevertheless, is that the only real team in the National Football League you think of fresh off the top of your head that has running backs by committee seemingly year in and year out are the Patriots. Last year it was Danny Woodhead. That was the quote-unquote feature back. You also had Benjarvis Green-Ellis. It seems almost running back and receiver by committee. They put in Deion Branch late last year as well. I think this is a sign. This is a place to succeed, not only because of the committee that's just come in year in year out for the Patriots and has succeeded, but Bill Belichick does a tremendous job ever since the start of being head coach with the Pats and just taking young guys, inexperienced guys that haven't really have any proven of themselves and just made themselves great players. Some of the beasts of New England, I would say, has started fresh, and Bill Belichick made him from not so hot to one of the best of all time.
Yeah, you hear the talk a lot about it is the Patriot way. What exactly is the Patriot way? Very simple. It's you come in, you do your part, no matter how big or how small that part is, and you make that team successful. And it doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady to Jeff Demps. You just do your part, and that's what they ask of you, and that's what makes this team so successful.
Exactly, and let's go on to how this will fare with Jeff Demps now. Now, we could be praising him a little more than we should. This guy is fresh out of college, and he's not really the size that you expect to be playing running back or receiver in this league. He looks more like, like a kicker size to me, I would say. But, with Demps, how is he faring right now in this game against, the Eagles? Foxborough is the site for the Eagles and Patriots Week 2 matchup. How do you think, Jeff Demps in the first half hasn't really seen the field. How's the game in general, been going on so far?
Well, this was an excellent time to cut in, actually. The Eagles' backup quarterback, Nick Foles, just hit backup tight end Clay Harbor in the end zone for a touchdown, and the Eagles have gone up 21-14. Back to the Jeff Demps topic, I don't know that he's seen the field yet. Considering he was only signed a couple days ago, I don't know how that works. If he will see time in this game, if he does get on the field, I will definitely come back to that. But as right now for this game break, the Eagles go up 21-14 on the Patriots with 11 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah, see, and for Jeff Demps, along with a lot of guys in the National Football League, it's hard to just go into a system and produce, especially right off the bat. That has been the case for Terrell Owens. We'll get to that topic later. He had an up-and-down preseason debut. But for Jeff Demps, it'll be hard for him to adjust, not necessarily to the speed of the game. I mean, we expect him just to fly right back, guys. That might not be the case. I mean, we may just see him, instead of doing a Randy Moss streak down the field, maybe something like a drag route all the time, or maybe just in the kick return game. That might be something that, Demps might be utilized a lot. Right now, it's kick return by committee as well. The Patriots don't really have a fortified guy back deep. Maybe it's Jeff Demps for those 3 years, maybe even longer, that can be that stud kick return guy, maybe send one or two to the house a year.
Yeah, at the moment, it seems the Patriots' kick return situation will be handled majorly by Julian Edelman. But agreed, Bill Belichick's always about putting the best player in the position that they need to be in. So I could definitely see him being a kick returner. He's definitely got speed. He has good burst. I think the biggest knock on him, which is why he wasn't drafted in the first place, was mainly because of, it would not surprise me if he would have been drafted this past year, but he told teams that were interested, I'm going to the Olympics, I'm going to try this track star thing first. And now that the Olympics is over, he would like to. And there's a reason his contract is only for 3 years, because after those 3 years are over, you have a year till the next Olympics, and he'd like to get back into that training. So it's definitely something that he was made aware of. Had he not have had this ambition for the Olympics, it would not have shocked me if he was drafted in this past year's draft.
Yeah, I think Jeff Demps still is in a position to succeed with New England. It's interesting how, with all the teams interested, we mentioned the Jets. I feel like going over just, a few miles upstream to New York, I don't think that I don't think it would have been a good fit with the Jets. I mean, they have seemingly their running back and maybe their receiving core, he can fit into the number 3 spot or something like that. But honestly, I feel like Jeff Demps, the perfect position was with New England, which is why it's very interesting with all these teams interested in Demps that he ends up going with possibly the best team possible for him, the best fit.
Yeah, I think this could easily be the best fit, if for no other reason, just there's no immediate pressure on him to start right away. And, when you look at this big spread offense that the Patriots run, they've recently changed it with their 2 tight end sets, but a lot of guys, are open. And, similar to what happened at the University of Florida, obviously there's plenty of differences. But I think system-wise, translating in the NFL, it would definitely make him the most comfortable.
Now with Demps, it'll just be very interesting whenever he takes that first lick or that first hit over the middle. We'll have to see how he reacts following something like that. Now we'll transition to a different topic. Now we have Ryan Tannehill, recently named just a few hours ago. It's a breaking story. Here we have him named the Dolphins starter. I'll just read down some statistics real quick. In week 1, he did play backups for the opening game of the year, but he did fire a touchdown and was 14 of 21. That's pretty good, let alone his first start, even in the National Football League. But, in week 2, he was transitioned to starter. I mean, he played during the entire first half. He didn't really have that touchdown pass and looked up and down, but I think really, I don't know if this is more, I don't know what you think, Phil, but I feel like this is more Tannehill is starting because of the lack of talent at quarterback rather than how good he is coming right out of college.
When I heard, it doesn't surprise me that this is what was going to happen, because you don't take somebody 8th overall and expect to sit him, even if it is only for 1 year. But me personally, I don't know that I agree with this move. I'm actually a huge fan of Matt Moore. I liked what he did last season. I was a fan of him back when he played for the Panthers when they finally decided to part ways with Jake Delhomme. I think the team was starting to rally behind Matt Moore at the end of last season, but just a lack of depth at wide receiver, other than Brandon Marshall, who's not even there anymore. This is probably one of the thinnest. I think we talked about a little bit last week with Chad Ochocinco's departure, Chad Johnson's departure, that it's very difficult for any quarterback, regardless of who it is, to succeed with the system that they have there with that lack of production by wide receivers. Obviously, Tannehill's the youngest one. You don't throw that much money at a guy. You don't pick him so high if you don't think he's going to translate well and be your starter. I don't know that I agree with this. I think you start with Matt Moore.